Welcome everyone to tonight's DreamBank event. My name is Andy Frisky. I'm a senior dream curator at DreamBank. Very excited to introduce our featured speakers tonight. But before we go ahead and do that, I'd like to welcome everyone who took time out of their evening to join us. So a little bit of context as to who we are and why we are here. So DreamBank is a free community resource that is put on by American Family Insurance. The whole reason why we exist is to help inspire people to pursue their dreams. And in large part, we do that through the programs that we offer. So we host 11 different event series, right around 30 free virtual events we put out a month that span, again, a wide range of topics, anything ranging from events such as what we're putting on tonight. We have events in Spanish, family-related activities. We have a crafting series, learning lab, which is kind of our how-to or a 101 series. We have an adulting series, which is things that maybe you didn't learn in school or that your parents didn't teach you. So if you are curious about some of our upcoming offerings and aren't super familiar with us, I will go ahead and link in the chat some of the great events that we have upcoming, and then you can go ahead and explore a lot of what we have put out since about the beginning, or the end of March of 2020. In addition to that, one thing I really want to highlight is our upcoming Dream Summit, October 6th and 7th. That is a multi-day summit that is meant to represent all of our 11 event series too. So I'll be sure to link the description in the chat for you folks as well too. Some really, really cool speakers on that lineup as well. So I very much encourage you to check that out. But let me go ahead and introduce our speakers tonight. So Eric and Marita Herkert-Oakland are co-founders of Relumed, a Madison-based agency specializing in visual facilitation and consulting and dedicated to reigniting the irrational drive required of entrepreneurs and business leaders to lead and grow with purpose. So in this virtual workshop, you will explore purpose, goals, alignment, your story, and the benefits of visualizing them with regular discussions to share inspiration and encouragement with the peers tonight. Participants will learn a new way of engaging in business strategy and will test out Relumed's constellation system for visual thinking for themselves, leaving them inspired to bring visual thinking into their business. There will be some participation tonight, so if you are at a place to turn on your cameras, participate, I very much encourage you to do so. Without further ado, though, I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Eric and Marita. Folks, go ahead and take it away.
Absolutely. So yeah, we're going to get the slide deck pulled up, but thank you so much for that introduction and for taking this time. We are really looking forward to our time tonight. I threw a few prompts in the chat already. We're going to probably ask this again in a minute. But as we're getting started, if you want to do an introduction of yourself in the chat, we're going to be asking for a lot of participation tonight. So the more that we get to know each other in different ways, the better. So throw that introduction in there. And then tonight, we're going to ask you to grab something to write with and to write on. So whatever that might be for you, if you want a whiteboard and a whiteboard marker, if you want a pen and a napkin, or just a regular pen and paper, it doesn't really matter. So tonight's workshop is Connect the Dots. We're talking visual thinking and business strategy. And yes, thank you to DreamBank for hosting this tonight. We've been really looking forward to this for a while now. So we're so glad to be able to do this. Quick introductions about who we are. My name is Marita Herkert-Oakland. I'm one of the co-founders of Relumed, and I work on the facilitation side of our work. So I get to facilitate, you can just keep buzzing through those ones. I get to facilitate conversations with leaders and teams. And Eric, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm an entrepreneur from the Madison area. I've got a couple companies that I've started since 2011 and had a fantastic job. Enjoyed connecting with the Madison community, and with Relumed, we're just spending more time bringing visual thinking, which is a little bit different than what True Scriber Squiggle deal in, but it's using visual thinking at the high end, at the strategy level of your business. And I focus on doing visual thinking, so I bring the visual part to our conversations and facilitated conversations. And I train leaders and entrepreneurs in visual thinking so that they can bring it to their business and to their own personal work.
So let's talk a little bit more about what Relumed does. So we've explained it a few times. We're going to be talking visual thinking for our evening tonight. So we've used the term several times already. We will get into more of exactly what we mean by that throughout our conversation tonight. But we bring visual thinking to leaders and teams through workshops, trainings, and facilitation. So to move it up the decision-making ladder. So I would love, we went a little too far again. I would love to see anybody throw their name and information in the chat just so we can start to get to know each other. Right now we have a small enough group that I would love if you're able to turn your camera on and participate that way. If you're not able, no worries. I'll go through a few expectations and stuff in a few minutes, but that is totally fine. So yeah, so throw your information in there. And if you also have like a book or a podcast or a movie recommendation that you have, I always love to hear that. That's something that in our conversations, we often hear people come up with new and great recommendations. So throughout our conversation tonight, throw those in the chat and let's all learn from each other. Now you can go ahead. All right, so one of the things that we've noticed that got us started with Relumed is that there's a lot of new ways and new thought leadership in doing business. And I feel like it's really reflected in the mission of DreamBank, but also a lot of the thought leaders that we've been paying attention to, like Simon Sinek and Brene Brown and Adam Grant, they're teaching us to lead with vulnerability. They're teaching us to start with why. They're teaching us to rethink how we approach our work, how we approach our beliefs. And those new ways of doing business are going to be requiring new skills. And visual thinking is one of those new skills that we're excited to show and introduce you to tonight. Thank you so much, Teresa, for throwing your information, and Mary and Andy and April. Fantastic. All right, so our plan for tonight. I have three main things that I want us to do. First, we've already mentioned this. We want to learn about visual thinking. The second thing that we're going to do tonight is we're going to practice it. We're going to practice a framework for business strategy, one that we often use in our work. It can be something that you can apply to a lot of different levels of your work. And that is why I'm asking you to go grab something to write with and something to write on. So whatever that is, whatever that looks like for you, have at it. If you don't, it's totally fine. You can just sit back and listen. But I hope that you're going to get a little bit more out of our time together if you're able to practice along with us. And then the third thing for tonight is that we're going to ask you to participate in several different ways. We've already asked you to participate on chat, and we're going to have a few more prompts throughout the evening tonight. But we're also going to be asking you to share your story, share some of the things that you're working on in a few minutes. For the bulk of our time tonight, Eric's actually going to be drawing live on the whiteboard. And so he's going to be drawing some of your stories, some of your experiences, and things that you've been visualizing and working on through our time tonight. So we hope it's going to be a really engaging experience, but I'm going to emphasize it again, we do want your participation in it. So we're really looking forward to it. So if you feel like you're ready for this, can you just type "I'm ready" in the chat? Just let me know, or give me a thumbs up or one of the cool emoji things that are happening.
If you want to raise a fist to the air, that works as well. Whatever level of excitement you want to bring.
I'm not that emotive.
Okay.
I'm happy to have just a little thumbs up. If that's
all right.
Okay. All right. So some expectations of us. We are so grateful that you have offered up 90 minutes of your time tonight, and we're hoping to use that to the best of our ability. And so that's what we're going to be holding ourselves to. The next thing is, even though we're spending this first bunch of time talking, we don't want to be spending that whole time. So we want to be engaging and working with you so that's why we're offering it in this Zoom format, so that we can be working together a little bit more. The next thing, and I always find this graphic really funny, if you don't want to try something new, you don't have to, but we're going to push you maybe a little bit. And I just find it amusing that the something new that may scare you a little bit for Eric is apparently snorkeling.
It's dark down there and it feels a little claustrophobic.
I mean, like scuba diving would have been a little scarier, but like snorkeling, you just kind of.
You're right.
It's fun.
You're right. Snorkeling's
okay. All right. And the final thing is that Eric and I want to be here as resources for you. If visual thinking is something that at the end of this 90 minutes is really interesting to you and you want to explore it more, let us know, get in touch, and we're happy to talk things through with you and help you on your journey. And then our expectations of you. You've seen, you got that?
Yep.
You've seen the little thumbtack and icon there. We've got a few more prompts in the chat, so throw those responses in there. We're hoping that you can give us some more information on how you're doing. The next thing is, if you've got questions along the way, give us a little hand raise, ask your question in the chat, and we'll make sure that we address that as quickly as we're able to. And then I think I've said this already, but we would love you to participate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we're good.
So let's get into a little bit more meat. And yeah, if you have a question, you can feel free to interrupt us in the chat and we'll get to it. So my first question is, do you know this person, the person who often jumps up in the middle of the conversation to get on a whiteboard, grab a marker, grabs a piece of paper, starts scribbling it out? Or are you that person? Raise your hand, in the chat or along the side or whatever, if this is either someone you know or you yourself. And what I'll say to you is that, in my opinion, expert opinion, that you are a visual thinker. You are expressing, you're externalizing the things in your head onto a board or paper to kind of help everybody involved get to a better place with the thoughts and ideas in your head. So let me give you a little definition of visual thinking and what it is.
Can we just pause and note that at least half of our group tonight is self-identifying as visual thinkers?
All right, our expectation level has gone up a little bit now.
It has.
So get ready. So what is visual thinking? So visual thinking is creating visuals, and I always focus on drawing. If somebody wants to use a lot of other things, that's great. Drawing is this way of creating visuals that's instantaneous. You can do it anywhere. It's like breathing. Once you have it, you can do it anywhere. It allows you to capture, process, and communicate information, often in real time, so that you can make better decisions faster. It allows you to not just be working with the words to describe things with your colleagues and your partners and whatnot. And what I often experience is that head nod, like we're talking about it, and everybody leaves thinking that we all understand what has just been said. But later you come to realize that something was missing or something didn't quite connect or just interpreted wrong. Visual thinking allows us to make sure we're on the same page when we leave the room. And that's something that I've found valuable time and time again.
I don't think you're the only one that's seen that head nod before.
Yeah. So let me ask you to put in the chat, if you have an idea of what visual thinking means or ways you've seen it, etc., by this definition, please put those in the chat. If it feels familiar to you, if it's like, hey, I've experienced this over here, is that visual thinking? We're happy to kind of hear what your thoughts are on that. So why visual thinking? Why should we insert drawing into our business and into our work? Why should we bring visuals up the decision-making ladder to where we're at? Well, first and foremost, 80% of what we learn as human beings happens through our eyes. We see it. It's our number one kind of sensory organ. And we learn from watching other people do things. We learn from seeing the instructions of things. And compared to listening or even kinesthetics, we learn so much of that through our eyes. Second, this is something that I learned heavily in my time at TrueScribe, is that when we share information visually, it's 3 times more memorable than just text or just what we hear. And that's 6 times more effective when we combine the two, when we combine images and text. So another thing about visual thinking is that it's not just replacing text with visuals, it's incorporating this into everything that we're doing. And I'll just add here that we are visual creatures. When we were kids, this was an article that Marita and I recently read, that a researcher looked at students across different classrooms, and maybe the ages a little bit better than I do, but they looked across the, like kindergartners. Raise your hand if you think you're creative or if you're an artist. And 90% of the kids raise their hand, and then you get to second and third grade, same question, and fewer have raised their hands. And by the time they get to their fifth and sixth grade, almost no kids have raised their hands. We are all innately able to draw, and writing is how we've adopted that skill into how we work and how we interact. But it's a part of all of us, and it's a part of our business too. Because in our businesses, we use visuals every day for marketing and sales and training. In fact, in 2021, that's going to be $7 billion spend in the US on graphics. Just images to be able to explain things better. Now, if we know for certain that visuals are important at the tail end of kind of our communication as an organization, wouldn't they be helpful? Wouldn't they be impactful at the top end of our organization where we're making decisions and trying to understand each other and communicate with each other? So here's another prompt. Look at, they're even catching me by surprise. What are ways that you're using visuals? Where is your organization kind of maximizing visuals today?
So we've gotten a little bit of that in the chat already from the last prompt. So I want to just call out those ones. So Mary was saying, when I create a webinar, I use less words and more visuals. I feel like that is so important, that we are able to hear what the people are saying, and the visuals are there to enhance what we're hearing, instead of like all reading a document together. So that's so important. April, you were talking about whiteboarding stories, mapping processes, systems, journeys. Well, okay, you're pretty much doing everything.
Yeah, you should just come over here and help us out here.
Please. And then Teresa, you're talking about sales flyers and webinars, April, metrics and ad campaigns. That is so important. I feel like we're capturing that entire journey of that ideation process of what's happening here, and then how are we solidifying those ideas, and then how do we share that with the world? We're not here to say that end point of graphic design isn't necessary. We're saying let's incorporate it everywhere. So yeah, thank you so much for those responses.
I'm thankful for that spin in graphic design. That's where I got my start 20 years ago in visuals, because that was where that's what paid the bills. But today I want to bring visuals. We want to bring visualization higher up that ladder, as I said. So, but okay, great. We're visual people, and we can do this in real time. But what's the benefit? Well, when we use visuals, when we draw in our conversations, when we bring visuals to the conversations in real time, we're sharing the mental load. We're taking the things that are in our head that we can only juggle so much in our head. We glorify kind of being able to add numbers in our head or do things in our head, but we limit ourselves when we keep things in our head. So we want to bring that cognitive load and share it with the whiteboard, share it with the piece of paper. We want to make the intangible things tangible. We want to make them more real, these goals, these purposes, these things that we want to accomplish. If they're just dreamed, right? And the DreamBank knows about this. How do you make this tangible? How do you make this real? How do you make people really see that what's coming is possible? We find the blind spots. When we start filling places on the paper, we find the gaps. We see what we're missing. We see what assumptions we're making. We can model our environment to better understand the context we're in, the systems that we're a part of, and understand how to better interact with them. And we can get our people, our teams, ourselves thinking more creatively when we start kind of taking the things out of our head and using our eyes to view and to process what we've been thinking about. And then lastly, in case you were wondering, and I think many of you already know, visual thinking is great for individuals, that people can get great benefit out of doing this for themselves, for their own work, for their own thoughts, their own ideas, to advance their own careers. But visual thinking explodes when we bring more people into it, when we share it, when we use it together. So enough talk of visual thinking, and many of you raised your hand as visual thinkers. So this might be easy peasy for those of you who are comfortable with a pen in hand and a blank piece of paper. For those who maybe aren't the ones who jump up, I want you to come with this exercise with us as well. And this is where I just quickly want to prove that you can draw. that you can draw to a level that's valuable for visual thinking, that can bring value in your visual thinking. And we're going to start with asking you to draw letters, right? So I'm going to ask you to draw the letter A on your piece of paper. So it's our first exercise. And this one's going to be real quick before we get into the constellation model and kind of show you how visual thinking is going to work in this area of story and purpose, et cetera. But we're going to draw your A. Next thing I want you to do is not a trick. I want you to forget that crossbar in the A, and I want you to cross the bottom, and you've got a triangle. So basic shapes, basic kind of line work. And again, the skills that you have in writing letters are going to help you here. Draw a C. It's a partial circle, and we're going to make it a full circle, right? So
we could have gone with O.
We could have. That felt redundant. I wanted it to be a little bit of a twist at the end.
Surprise.
So we're going to a C to a circle. Also, this start with the same C circle. Here's an H. Right, we got 2 blocks down the lines down the side, 1 down the middle. Shift that 3rd one to the top and add a 4th one down at the bottom. You've got a square. I mean, I hope I'm just wowing you with your own capabilities in drawing.
This is remarkable stuff.
All right, here's level 2. So if you've completed this so far, you've gotten through level 1. Here's level 2. Here's just like a little U, like this little kind of a cup, and then I want you to just take it around in a loop, and we've got a cloud. So you see this.
You're back to middle school.
Back to
you
middle
can do
school.
this.
Yeah. So, and the reason I do this, I just want to get people past this idea that they don't have the skill, that they don't have the artistry, because visual thinking isn't about artistry first. It's about our basic ability to scratch in the sand, draw on a piece of paper, put paint on a wall, and communicate with each other. And we're gonna see how we use that here coming up. I may challenge you again later on this, but for now, I'm gonna hand it over to Marita.
Yeah, I just want to close this out real quick so we've asked you to self-identify as a visual thinker, and a lot of you did. And we're pretty excited when somebody does, but we hear just as much people that say, like, I don't want to go up on the whiteboard. I'm not going to go, like, you're going to make fun of me. All I can draw is a stick figure. And so what we want is to kind of level that playing field.
Lower the bar.
We definitely want to lower the bar, because the skills and the value here is not in the artistry. It's in being able to communicate ideas. And so we want the folks that are saying, I can't even draw the stick figure, to see, no, you can. This is the basics of this. And the folks that are already able to do this, you can help bring along your reluctant friends, and that's okay too. All right, that's it.
All right, switching gears, we're on a whiteboard.
So when we facilitate conversations with teams, we actually do it through visual facilitation. Surprise, surprise. And that means that Eric is live drawing during our conversations. And so we've had the slides up there. Those are pre-made slides, obviously. Now we're going to be drawing along with our conversation. And so when you are, working remotely, this is a skill that you can use. If you've got questions about tools at any point and how we do this, we're happy to talk about that. But this is a way to bring visual thinking into remote work. All right. So if you have your piece of paper and your thing to write with and your thing to write on, go ahead and grab that. And we're going to dive into the meat of our conversation today, which is, how do you use these tools to explore strategy, to explore your business challenges, your work obstacles, your planning, your processing, your story, your purpose? How do you bring intention to all of this? So one of the things that we use is a framework that we call the constellation system. Eric, do you want to explain a little bit about why we call this constellation, or should we save that?
We'll talk more about it later, but yeah.
Noted.
Real briefly, the idea of the constellation comes from kind of the way that constellations have served humanity over time. First and foremost, in the early constellations, we used them to store our stories for further generations, right? Somebody would grab a spot in the sky and tell a story and share it with others, and it had meaning and significance, and it would carry on because it was up there forever. And then later we used constellations to navigate, to find our routes from one place to another, because we learned that they were constants. We learned that they gave us kind of focus and the ability to move to new places. And then in this modern time, we use constellations to separate spots in the sky so that we can start examining the universe, so we can better understand who we are in it all. And so constellations have just kind of always gave us more and more as they've aged, and we've kind of found new ways to use them. So this map has this mapping that we use has a broad way of being used, and we're going to show you one of those ways tonight.
Absolutely, thank you. And we also just love the fact that we can have such a rich metaphor, visual metaphor in something like this. So put on your work hat, your problem solving hat, whatever kind of made you want to come and join us tonight, whatever problem that you're thinking through or thing that you want to work on. We're talking in business terms tonight rather than our personal stuff, although we can use it in that way. So throw on your work hat.
And one of the things that we talked about in the introduction is about kind of brand story, but brand story could be something that helps a business describe who they are to a group of people. But as you're working internally, sometimes you need a story to tell about why we're working on this project, or how we're tackling this, or why we're going this way instead of another way. So this map applies. The language might be brand, but the story is probably just as important to emphasize, regardless of what kind of business you're in.
Absolutely. So using your work hat, using the story that you're looking at exploring, draw a circle on your page. We are going to start by exploring your why, by exploring the purpose behind what it is that you're working on. This might be a project. This might be you starting your own business. This might be a side venture that you're doing. This might be leading your department. Whatever this is that you are thinking through, draw that circle. And I want to know, why this? Why is this? What is the purpose? What is the why behind what you're doing? So write down, and it doesn't have to be a singular why. We're in exploration mode right now. We are not in finalizing a product. So write it down. Think of as many why this is important as you can. Maybe you want to figure out who it's important for. Is there something that you're moving towards that you want to change in the world? Is there something in yourself that you're looking to change? What might that be? We want to see all of those whys and what they might look like for you. Maybe why is this important now? Is there something that happened that made this important? Is this something that you've been moving towards for a long time? We will be asking for a few people to share so we can map this together in very small ways. So think about what you're willing to volunteer, and that certainly doesn't need to be everything that you are working through on your own page. What's the transformation you might want to see? What's the transformation that you want to see for yourself, for your team, your organization, your community, the people that you serve? Questions beget questions when we start down this path. So now that you've maybe gotten a few of your whys out there for what you're working on, let's take it a little step further. Eric, do you want to explain the background of the 5 whys?
Yeah. absolutely. And I apologize. The author of this, the 5 Whys comes out of the Toyota Motor Company. And when it was originally created by the father of the Toyota founder, it was to kind of get to the bottom of problems. One of the things that it got criticized for is that it's more subjective than objective, right? It's too easy to put your own biases into it. But I think it's really good at getting to this maybe more subjective answer in this. And that's, it starts, so that's where it comes from is this 5 Whys is about kind of, sometimes when we say our first why, when we try and answer why, it's not clear. We kind of, we answer to the left or we answer to the right. So it asks us to drill down a little bit further.
So take the thing that's kind of standing out to you the most on your page. And let's dig in a little bit further. So you've got your original why. So why is that one relevant? Why is that one standing out to you? Take it another level further. Can you ask yourself that same question? Can you be the best 2-year-old or 3-year-old possible and dig down as little natural scientists?
A 6-year-old who's constantly asking.
He is a very curious kid. Take that as far as you feel like you need to go. The exercise is called 5 Whys. You take it where you feel like, oh, that makes more sense. I'd love to have a little participation in chat. I'd love to take a little pulse on, did you notice anything? Did you go further than you thought? Did anything new or unexpected come out of that personal exploration? Or do you have everything figured out? And if so, do you have a secret to that? And while you're sharing in chat, is there anybody who is willing to share a why or a little story of what they're working on and what their purpose is that they're exploring in this so far? And when you do that, then Eric's going to be drawing along with that. And you can see a little bit about how he is working on those visuals and how that kind of gets built out. Raise your hand or just kind of, you can do a quick unmute and let us know if you're interested in.
I can do it.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mary.
So since the pandemic happened, you find out that, people are now thinking about, am I really doing what I'm created to be? Am I fulfilling my purpose? So part of that is that I got trained, certified in life purpose coaching. And then also I was already trained in business consultant. So I created my business, MCH Consultants Group, to really help people, for-profit, nonprofit, to grow on purpose and really focus on why they were created. Because a lot of people are getting off, going a different direction, where be focused on your purpose and why you created. And that even means looking at, if you're in a career, is that really what you're supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
So that's really my focus and what I do.
Great. What are you looking towards right now? Was that something that was easy for you to articulate? It seems like you've been working in the same sandbox.
Yeah, I've been, I think a lot of it is I've been a consultant for business consulting with women business centers for a while. And then I was a director of Girl Scouts, so I was helping girls. So that was impactful. But then really when I went back to Girl Scouts as a director, it was more kind of numbers and everything. And that wasn't what I was and who I was. I'm a person connect with people and really, trying to make sure I'm walking in purpose. So here now I feel I'm more impactful because I have clients that are for nonprofit and also coaching individual and helping them find their purpose and what that truly is.
Yeah, that's great. Was it helpful to visualize what your purpose is? Is that something that was easy to do for you?
My background is training and development. So some of these things years ago, when you get certified as a facilitator, they help you with some of the visuals. So, I'm always drawing. And when I work with clients, always taking out a piece of paper to show them the map or create a tool that they can use visually. So I use visuals when I'm plotting out anything for me personal in my life.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing. All right. So the next piece of it, so we've kind of gone through our first defining our purpose. Eric, can you help us in getting from shapes to icons?
Yes. So here's the next little challenge I want to give you. Where we're working so far in mapping, diagrams, processes, et cetera, that some of you have talked about. Containers, shapes with labels work fantastic. And they work very well in kind of capturing down the essentials. But as you see, kind of one of the things that I like to do and is very helpful, I find very helpful is there are times to break outside of those shapes. And there's times to kind of bring something a little different that not just plays on the logic side of the equation of what we're trying to do, but taps a little bit more into the emotion, into the connectedness, into the shared experience, et cetera. So I'm going to push some of you to move beyond shapes with me. So we're gonna, on your page where you had your A and you drew your triangle, here's what I'd like you to do next. I want you to draw the top part of that triangle. Again, don't connect the bottom. And then I want you to make kind of like an M. We're going to come here like this, here, here, here. And we've drawn a mountain, right? Super simple. And mountains are often used as a metaphor for the goals and the big projects that we want to accomplish, because like a mountain climber, these 13,000 above feet above sea level peaks are big things to accomplish. So that's one of them. We drew a C earlier. I'm going to bring us back here. So C, draw your circle. Let's draw one circle to the right of that. And I'm going to draw 4 dashes on the top, bottom, left, and right. And then in the middle, I'm going to draw the hour hand and a minute hand. And we have a little clock, right? Very simple. Has just enough elements of the clock so we know exactly what it is. It's unmistakable, but it didn't take us to do any shading or learn perspective or study landscapes to get to a visual that could help us identify what we're talking about. I'm going to do one more. This is one as a bonus round. Here's a P over here on the left side.
Wasn't in our original plan.
Nope.
Here.
I'm gonna skip one because it's just the P. We're gonna make our up, and then we're just gonna do a triangle instead of the loop, and you've got a flag, right? I use this icon a lot for milestones. Here's the important things that we have to get to. Here are the way markers that tell us that we're on our way. Now, if there's certainly ways to go further than this, but again, trying to break some boundaries that you can bring some flavor to these visuals as well. So if your purpose has something that visually you could connect to and want to add to your drawing that we're making to, I don't know, again, add that emotional element to it, add that kind of brand to what this purpose is, I invite you to do so. And if any of you were brave enough to, and I'm sure all of you were brave enough to try it out, but if anybody's brave enough to lift up their paper and show us on the screen that you're able to kind of make the mountain, draw the clock, feel free to do so. You will get cheers.
You will. We're very supportive.
No jeers. This is a no jeers zone for that sort of thing. So feel free to share it if you've got it.
Awesome. All of these visual thinkers are like, I already knew how to do that. It's all good. All right, so back to our visual. Oh, Mary, that was awesome. Back to our visual map that we are making of our constellation. So we've worked on our purpose. My next question is, what are you doing to affect that purpose? And when you're thinking of a project or your business or your team, that's the very tangible things that you're doing. It's, you are doing your sales, or you are doing, marketing efforts, or whatever that might be. But it's also the client consultations that you have. It's whatever those things are that you might be doing. We want to list that out. And this is another brain dump. And I like to start exploring kind of some different avenues for this. There's what are you doing? What is your team doing? What is your organization doing? There's that, what should you be doing? What's in your mind of, I wish we could just do this, and that would be the right move to get towards my purpose. And that you might have several of those things, you might not have any. It kind of depends on the stage of your process right now. Is it something that you're comfortable in and is kind of working well? You may not have a lot of other, we call that the swirl. You may not have a lot of other swirl that you're moving towards or thinking through. But if you're kind of in a brainstorming mode, if you are in that blue sky mode, there can be a lot of what should I be doing? What are my options? I spent some time, a few years working in marketing. And I feel like that what should I be doing was a really tough place to be in marketing, that there's so many new things that always come up, new platforms, new ways of reaching customers, new ways to tell your story. And it feels like everything is a should be doing. Like I'm trying to get all of this done and I can't get to it. This is a really helpful way to kind of cut through that FOMO of, I should be doing that. But once I get this out on paper, and we actually start mapping this, I can see what makes sense and what doesn't. There's even what did you do? Is there something that you used to be doing that was moving you towards this that you're not anymore? For some reason, it didn't work, or it did work and you lost a resource or a whatever that might be. So start mapping out those things. There's kind of the, what does someone else think you should be doing? What did that, backseat driver tell you should be happening? Some of that can be really hard when we've got it in our heads. And I find that even just the act of getting things out, like Eric was talking about externalizing, it can kind of diminish the power of something that is kind of taking hold. As we're working through something, if we're working through a tough problem or a challenge that's not making sense, we can just get it out there and not have to worry about it. It can also illuminate, this makes more sense now that it's out. So it kind of can act both ways. It may be almost a neutralizer to get things out there. And then I want to know, is what you're doing and all of those things that you were able to map on, how do they connect to that purpose? How do they connect to those whys? And there can be a lot of different connections. One of the things that we talk about a lot in this is that we like to live in the mess. We live in the swirl that I was talking about. because this is how we process information. This is how we can start to cut through some of that clutter, add some intention around what we're doing, and make sure that we are moving towards that purpose in an effective way. And one thing that I've noticed in this is that those connections start to become where we need data. So Eric is a very visual, creative person. I actually am more comfortable with spreadsheets. That's just my little secret with you right now. But I find that in this strategy side, in the problem solving piece, we need to be able to explore it organically so that I know the data that I'm tracking, the metrics that I care about are relevant.
Part of the reason we don't bring our resources of graphic design up the ladder is because you often need to have like a certain amount figured out before you can get a designer or a creative involved. You need to have things spelled out. The reason visual thinking works better in this step between the chaos and the complexity is because it can be messy. We can draw a little bit. It didn't take us anything. It took us seconds to put something down, and now we can erase it and start over. We're not attached to it. We're not beholden to it. It's just the expression for the minute, and it didn't cost us anything except for that time to put it down and think through it.
Mm-hmm.
And the time it took you to learn how to do that sort of thing.
So now that you've explored some of those things that you do, does anyone want to share either in chat or giving us some examples so that we can kind of map out a brief connection that you've made?
So share it with us, your purpose that you're coming up with, that you're talking about, and then what's the action, what's the activity that's going to get you there. And if just taking it back to story, if you were to explain this to somebody else, what you're working on and what you're talking about, how would you talk to them about the purpose behind this endeavor? And then what are the concrete, this is the concrete part of it. What are we going to do to get there? Why can they trust you?
It's okay to share. All right, don't worry. I'm
All
gonna
right.
give you, yeah,
I'm going to try to do this. So,
Come on.
So I manage a team and that sells a product. So it's a bond product. So what I've been doing, I just finished up my last 4-week training session we had 4 sessions, hour apiece. And what we did was, so I'm trying to get them to understand how to underwrite this program. And so in order to do it, I was very visual with my PowerPoint presentations and everything. And then I sent everybody a coffee cup, a blank coffee cup that they could draw on, and then they bake it and then I asked them to visualize what they think this product means to them. So, and we came back with all these different coffee cups and what they thought the product meant to them. So that was kind of like the visual end of it. And it was actually pretty interesting on what people thought the product was. Some people were very literal. Some people thought it was more artistic. Somebody did a super, contract person. And so it's very interesting. And then, and so that was kind of like my visual part of it. And then the PowerPoints are very visual because nobody wants to read a lot. And so that was kind of what I was doing. But again, then what I have a hard time with, so we do all this, and then how do you know if the person that you're training gets it? Visually, do they understand the end result of your vision? I don't know if I'm talking in circles, but that's kind of always my struggle.
What did you learn from the coffee cup drawings? You said there was a lot of different people took it. Yeah. Did you feel like they were getting it with those drawings?
Yes, they did get it. And then, but I understand, so the people that were very artistic and thought of it as the program's called the Flyer program, and I don't want to go into deep about what it is because I'm in the bond department, not in insurance. So it's called Flyer. So some people literally took it as an airplane. Some people took it about what the program represents and how to underwrite it. And so the people that are very artistic are the ones I have a harder time, of course, reaching to make fast decisions, because this is kind of, you have to make a fast decision in this product. And so, but then I understand how they visualize the product. So now I think I'm going to understand how to go about training them, if that makes sense. So it kind of works all together, I guess. So
I think that's fantastic. What an interesting way to get that information from them. And I wonder how that sticks. Like you just did the 4-week training, which was quite a lot of information, I assume, that you were offering.
Yes, it's an hour, and there was, role playing, and we did entry, and just lots and lots of information packed in these 4 hours. Yeah. And what I did is, because we work across, I'm in Phoenix right now, so we have East Coast, West Coast time frames we have to cover. So I sent everybody a box. So I sent, like the West Coast, because it's at 9:00. So I gave breakfast boxes to those for 4 weeks. They could eat breakfast. And then the Midwest people got a little bit of a brunch box. And then I gave the East Coast people a lunch box. And not anything exciting. It's macaroni and cheese, things like that, So it was interesting, but that way they all had lunch and they could learn as we, and then they had the coffee cup challenge, as I call it. So it was interesting. It was very visual, and my PowerPoints are visual, but then I always have a hard time just following up. Do they get the vision? Because I think some people like the words, but then some people like the pictures. So how do you know which one you're hitting? Or is it both? What's the best, balance, I guess.
So I'm going to just take a little thread of that last question. Eric, could you explain, like, when you put words down and when you're kind of taking these visual notes versus when you're putting pictures and icons, like, why would you choose one over the other?
Yeah, I mean, there's certain things that are in our language that, like pronouns and or proper nouns and titles of things and names of things, that we have to write those things down, because there's not unless there's a logo or a brand behind it that's been created, there's not an image that represents that purely, right? So we need to write some of those things down. And often the things we draw then are the tangible things, the people, places, things, but then also the emotions, because those are things that we want to make more tangible for people. We want people to kind of connect with things in an emotional way. And so, for instance, obviously you talked about, it's called the Flyer program. So I drew this airplane down here. But you're wondering, the other question is, like, I guess a question I have for you, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot, is, well, why do you want, and if you can tell me in broad ways, if it's something particular, but why do you want people to underwrite this bond? Why this bond? What's important about it?
So it's a huge revenue driver for the department. So this is how the start of their beginning of underwriting for this type of bond. And then they graduate up into larger $30 million contracts, underwriting, large contracts. So it's a stepping stone as far as training for promotion and getting, it takes time, but it's the start of understanding contract through. It's about what we do is the bond department is we do contracts when people are building buildings. We're bonding that contractor. That's what it's about. So we have to look at contracts, obligations, things like that, financial statements. So there's a lot of parts to it. But this also too, it's the stepping stones of how they move in through the department to a higher, a different title or career goals. I guess that's how it is, just your career stepping stones. So,
Yeah.
I'm just helping, I'm mentoring them, I guess, in some degree too.
So like I mentioned earlier, when we started drawing those connections between what you're doing and why, those connections are the places that you're going to be looking for data. So you're doing the training so that they understand the importance and the way that the underwriting happens. So you want the data to make sure that the training got them there, got them towards that understanding. So there's probably several different ways to do that. I'll defer to experts on how you're going to be following up. But I think, the more that you're understanding what you're doing and why and what you need to know, those are the opportunities to figure out, is it a follow-up survey? Is it, conversations? Is it, a visual map? Maybe. Maybe for some people, you're seeing that there's a range of ways that people experience and understand things. So certainly meeting people where they're at is important, which, you literally did with breakfast boxes, brunch boxes, and lunch boxes. So
it's hard though when we all work remote. We're never in the same building ever. So everybody works from their house. So it's hard to get that touch where there's some kinds of organic conversations and discussions because we're all on this Zoom kind of.
Yeah.
Zoom.
Yep.
It's all about
finding alignment and making sure that you can have those real conversations. This works for us in the way that we're doing this. It doesn't work for everybody. But yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. All right. So we've got 2 parts down of our 3-part constellation model. I didn't tell you how many parts there were, so you could have wondered if there were like 16, but no, it's only 3. So we started by visualizing our purpose. The next thing we did was, what are we doing to get there? We drew a few connections. The last piece of it that we're going to put in our final circle or around our final circle is, what do you have? What resources do you have to get there? And those resources are your time, your expertise, your staff, all of those things that you might have. We do work with a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of people that are kind of getting started in their work. This is a really important piece for people that are kind of finding their way in that startup mode, that initial mode of, do I even have what I need to make this happen? Once you're in an established organization or you're doing something that's been around a long time, this might not be as relevant. But what are those resources that you have? You might feel like you're lacking a lot. Sometimes it feels like we're not able to do something because I can't do it because I don't have that thing. I don't have that certification, or I don't have that staff member to make this happen. So you can certainly put down those needs. You can put down like, this isn't going to happen because I don't have this. But whatever you're doing to move towards your goal needs to have resources behind it.
In the case of the brand story, think of this as, well, why you? Why your team? What's the special sauce that you're bringing to this that somebody else isn't going to be bringing, right? What is yours that is nobody else's? It's allowing you to attack this goal or go towards this purpose that it may not be for somebody else.
Absolutely. This is one area that once you start listing resources, it can be very empowering. Like, oh, my team was further along than I realized, or, oh, we have a lot more available to make this happen. Or I can acknowledge that this isn't going to happen because we don't have this in place yet. And again, like we've been talking about, these externalizing things, how are we moving? How are we creating strategy? We need to have all of this down. We need to have this exploration down. All right, so we've come up with several things, several resources that you have, your expertise, your time, your talents, your certifications, all of those things that help, your network, your connections, the people that support what you're doing, the people that support your team. whatever that might be, is those resources that you have. And the next thing that we start doing is we start saying, okay, what do we have that's moving towards what we're doing? And again, we're starting to draw those connections. And when we're talking about the constellation system, these connections are the backbone of that system. Once we start getting that visual map out there, we can start to see, I have a resource that might be missing, or I'm missing a resource that I can't do this thing without this resource, or I have these, this expertise on my team and I'm not doing anything with it. I need to take advantage of that in the best way, the most supportive way. We want to get them mobilized and get them towards this goal. And then you start to see, is this moving towards our goal? And once we see that big picture, we fill in those circles and we call it, we have, we do, so that. So what do you have? What do you do? So that what happens? And this is a visual framework. You can add as many visuals as you want to this, but the visual piece is the act of drawing it out organically. Often when Eric is noting things and doing this, he's writing first and adding the icons later. When he notes something that's really important, when it's something that our team has connected on, then that's where an icon's gonna go. Or when it just falls out for one because you use the word zombie or something and he can't not draw a zombie. So I want to hear from somebody else who has a we have, we do, so that. Tell me what your purpose is in what you're doing and what you have been doing to get there, and maybe one or two resources that you have. Let's fill this in for you.
You've seen a couple of people jump up and bravely share with us.
Mm-hmm.
We're not that scary. We're just a couple of softies over here.
It's true.
Midwestern softies. So if anybody else would like to share and jump up with us so we can show kind of all these stages for your project. We're not taking into account is that you may all be secret agents and you can't share any of this with us.
True. We did not plan for that part.
We will just have to live with it.
So my problem is kind of in process right now, and it's a problem anyway. I work on a team of coaches, and so you all are facilitators and you know how incredibly difficult it is to facilitate coaches. So we have a lot of stuff changing in our day-to-day work environment, and the team has volunteered to work on some diversity and inclusion impact. Our engagement surveys have been down in our space. So teams volunteered to work on that. Really important stuff. Our goal is to make everybody feel like they can bring their whole selves to work.
Mm-hmm.
And so the frustration that the team has been feeling is that we talk a lot, but we don't get to the action. So it's this analysis paralysis space, asking everyone to work in a new way. So, we've got a ton of experience across a wide swath of skills, tools, different frameworks, business knowledge. People come from all over, a lot of different backgrounds, but we're still just not getting into that action space. And so we've identified some of the resources on the team who have worked in a more fast-paced environment, and working out some ways to encourage the movement in the coaches. So we've got, the time, the energy, like the dedication to the project. It's just identifying the roadblock, right? right?
Yeah, that is, so what are the actionable things that you're doing? So I know that once you're in that, like, let's make the plans and talk about things, it can be very easy to stay in that.
Yeah, and in this case, there's a power dynamic within the team as well. So it's a team with leaders and frontline contributors. Yeah, so there's all the impact pieces to it. We know we need to get to action. We know when we need to get to action by, but it's bringing all of the team along because it is working in a new way. So we have, the people who are skilled and have worked in this new way, but they're almost taking a back seat because they don't want to usurp leadership of the team.
One of the ways that we have used this system, this model, to explore not your exact issue, but similar team dynamics and like how are we growing and adapting together, is to just turn it towards the people and the team. So who is on the team? What resources are they bringing? And that's going to be in that experience, and kind of map that out. Who are they as individuals? And what are those skills? What are the things that they are contributing to that team? And this can be something like how you approach it. I don't know your team or anything. But then when you're moving into that center section that we do, what is their role in the team, in the organization? How do they show up in where you're going? And so we have kind of who are you as a person and what are those skills that you're bringing, but what is your role here? And how does that connect? And I'm really interested to see what that might look like for those people with some of that experience. I don't know how they're expected to show up or how they could be. And then we've kind of talked about, how is it today? And then where should it be going? And so, is there a way to start mapping out and visualizing how are we as individuals, as a team, moving ourselves in this direction? And where are we stuck? So that's, without knowing more information or anything, I think that's one way that we've kind of used it in the past. That's a tricky situation, and I wish you all the best with that.
Yeah, it's a work in progress. We'll get there.
It is.
One of the things that's not a part of this version of this, taking it further, we often dig into assumptions and what are the beliefs behind. And you talked about that a little bit in, like, some people believe that if they do what they need to do to make this change, that they're going to ruffle feathers, or they're going to overstep, or they're going to get in someone's grill in the wrong way. And so how do we challenge that assumption? How do we bring our own assumptions out, or find our own, and maybe somebody else in that dynamic has a blind spot. So how do we find those things so that we can, again, address them on a board instead of just wrestle with them in our head and in our hearts, and kind of keep locked,
Having something visual in a tough conversation, in a tough team dynamic conversation, can diffuse some tension. You can abstract the ideas, and you can, you can kind of bring the focus into how is this organization? How are we working together, instead of like, what's coming at me right now? And that can be a really helpful thing to move past. So but tough situations are tough no matter what. And, visuals aren't going to solve all of that by any means.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for jumping up for us.
All right. So I want to talk a little bit about what we just did. So you want to pull up that slide deck again?
No, I do.
Thank you. So the first thing that we did in exploring our constellation and doing this strategy work was we started with why. We started with our purpose.
Sorry.
You went too far.
I was confused.
Yeah, I know. It's okay. And there's a lot of reasons why we did that. But I'm going to highlight a few of them because this is kind of the start of any visioning conversation, any process conversation. You want to start with that why, that purpose. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to be harnessing passion. Everyone, if we're moving towards, a more inclusive work environment, there's some passion involved in that. You want to know where we're going, and people can align with that big vision. The next thing is that we are providing purpose. We're giving that North Star to, like, everything we do is moving towards this. It can give you a litmus test of, I'm doing this because we're going to be moving towards this purpose. The next thing is that you're going to attract people that are committed to that. Hopefully you're going to have, a wide enough why and a wide enough purpose that you're going to attract, a lot of people are going to feel welcome to that, but you are providing that purpose, that vision. The next thing is that you can focus conversation and you can speed up decision-making. If we have that litmus test of, we need to know that what we were doing is moving us towards, people better understanding this product that we're selling, and everything that we do make sure that we're getting them to that better understanding, then something that doesn't move them that way, we can say, that didn't work. We're not doing that again. You can make those decisions quicker. And the last thing is, it provides a constant. I've heard a few, notes in this conversation tonight of, the challenges of working from home, the challenges of remote work. We have been through challenge this last year and a half, and it is not done. And a lot of things feel like they are shifting underneath us. When we are able to provide a constant in that purpose of the work that we're doing, how we are coming with our team, our organization, ourselves, that is orienting. That keeps people aligned, and that makes it feel a little less shifty underneath our feet. So we started with why in our conversation as well. And the full model that we provided for the constellation looks like this. It's we have, we do, so that. This is a framework for many different levels of visual thinking and setting that strategy. We can use it, we will use it sometimes when we're looking at, all, different people's businesses and how they're structuring them. We can do a constellation from somebody's website because you are able to gain that information from there. You've done that before, actually, like last week.
It's a tool that I'll often use to unravel or kind of lay out what somebody's presented to me to capture kind of a big picture of how it connects. It's small. It takes 10 minutes, but it allows me to kind of gather that information. It's sort of like creating my own executive summary of somebody else's business plan based off of what they communicate.
Absolutely. So you can do it for things that you're observing. You can do it for your next month's strategy goal, or for your vision for the year or your next 5 years, if you can actually think that far ahead, which is amazing. And so this is something it's a really light touch framework, but it's a way to start externalizing your thoughts. It's a way for you to start getting things down on paper. Go ahead.
All right. So there is a lot of different ways to apply visual thinking. So we shared with you a few tools, and we shared with you a few tips. And some of you shared a lot of ways that you're using visual thinking to map out processes to maybe design the customer journey or the employee journey as they're working into your organization, or the consultants that you work with or the people that you're helping. There are so many different ways to visualize information, ideas, the environments that we're in. And there's a framework that I came across by a man named Dave Gray. And he talks about kind of visualizing things in a few ways. So I've already given you not all the skills, but many of you now have drawn 2 or 3 icons. So like you're good to go. Like, yep. But how do you apply, or when do you apply visuals in different ways? Well, this one's a little bit, I'll put it, maybe more information than what you wanted to know, but what I want to give you this kind of way of thinking about using visuals. The first 2 dynamics that we think about when we want to visualize something is, am I most concerned about time? What order something happens is, what sequence, the duration, that sort of thing? Or am I most concerned with space, the relationship, the amount of something, how they connect, or the way they affect each other? So there's two different ways, two different sides of that spectrum, time and space. The next thing is, do I want to take a 10,000 foot view, abstract it, think logically? Or do I want to bring it down to a detailed, concrete view, get more emotional, tell more story around the information or the ideas that we're using? So to give you a little bit more concrete of what these are, I'm going to share, basically this is a scatter plot type of visual, but these are some examples of where line charts, bar charts, pie charts, things that are familiar. These things are up in the abstract, and you can see how a line chart deals more with time, right? Over a constant period of time, this variable is changing. Whereas a pie chart is one point in time, but it takes up what percentage of a whole does it take up?
Can you highlight how some of these would be working in visual thinking strategy or for strategy?
So one of the things that, again, not as much of a spreadsheet user, once in a while, I have to think through, okay, what data are you giving me? Can I plot it up on a whiteboard and just get myself a bearing? I'm not looking for the type of data visualization that the financial part of your organization needs to make a big purchase or that sort of thing. I'm talking about getting rough numbers so that I get a bearing and can work my way through it. When it comes to visualizing sometimes too with pie charts, right? We get our circle. You'll see sometimes people put up more of an infographic type where they'll put up, if I've got 30 of one thing versus 10 of that thing, it's a little bit easier for people to capture what that means than in a pie chart. So using visuals in different ways to show information and show data. But as we get a little bit further down, we need to get more concrete. You can see things turn into more flow charts and org charts and mind maps. So what we were doing today was a bit more of a mind map. We cared more about the relationship of things and how they connected than what order they went in or what duration of time we were dealing with, right? We were more concerned about telling a story of the overall kind of state of something than necessarily digging down into one specific area. But then we've got things like storyboards for telling stories or making videos or animation content. This is where we start might bring in, we can do these things roughly to plot it out before we hand it over to a designer or graphic designer. And then just to kind of fill it out, things like actual maps and models of things, it still works within the visual thinking space. It starts getting into very much more prototyping and concrete things that we might do before we hand it off to production and that sort of thing. Different skills all along this way. There's a spectrum of ways of using visuals, regardless of whether you're an analytical thinker and you want to map out some data really quick, or if you're a storyteller, if you're creative and you want to be able to kind of map out this journey that you're experiencing so that you can kind of put that into some other formats or include other artists and graphic designers in it. You more just because you probably weren't enough things, but just to fill it in some more types of charts and graphs, et cetera, that fit on the spectrum and things that we could use, scatter plots and radar charts and fishbone. I've learned a ton of new kinds of charts that are archaic as heck, but still manage to be used here and there. So if you've got something you're thinking about, but just thinking of that as different ways that visual thinking can be applied anytime, anywhere, as you're needed, as the conversation needs it, as the people around the table need to have a better understanding of where everybody's at. There's ways of applying that through these tools.
Yeah. All right. Well, as we approach our final 10 minutes or so together tonight, first of all, I want to let you know that you can visit relumed.com/workshop. And there is just a download the Constellation template right there. You don't have to sign up for anything or anything like that. You can just download the darn thing. So you can get a template of we do so that, and then the one that was a little bit more filled in that we showed you on the previous slide. But I want to hear from you. My goal in conversations like this is to offer a little bit of a mindset shift for you in the way that you were thinking about things. We aren't expecting you to come out of this like ready to use everything tomorrow. But did you have any mindset shifts tonight? Is there anything that stuck with you?
This is Mary. For me, I started working with a nonprofit, and I started putting all these charts and everything in a Google folder. But I think it's getting in the direction where we're going, what we're doing today. But I think I'll do it more visually for they can really see as we start filling in these pieces, the direction that we're going to. So that really helped me a lot. And then also when he showed the last map, it was bringing back stuff that I learned, but I haven't been using. So thank you.
There you go.
A question, Eric, what whiteboard were you using on screen? Tool?
Great question. I'm screen sharing. So I'm using an iPad and I'm just pulling one of the tools that I use to draw in. So it's kind of agnostic. I use that tool because I also do a lot of design. So it's a bit of a design tool. But a couple of tools that we love using, one is Google Jamboard. And so if you're using Google Docs or have a Google account, it's a fantastic whiteboard that you can add images to, you can share with somebody else, and they can draw in real time with you. Sometimes Marita and I will be sitting in the living room on a Jamboard on our own computers, just so that where we would typically just be talking, I can get visual. I can translate, and she can see what I'm putting up so that we're kind of communicating more clearly.
And also I have not allowed a whiteboard in the living room.
I can't lug it around everywhere. It's hard. And so the other product or tool that I've dipped my toe in that I think is worth, there's enough people that I trust that look at it, is a tool called Miro, M-I-R-O. And it's another kind of collaborative whiteboard that a team can each log into from, so you get a login, similarly, like if you're on a Zoom call, you'd also get a Miro login, but you can have whiteboards and things preset. And sorry, go back. So we can, so you can have some things preset up so that people can walk through it and they can share things and that they can doodle on the board, or they can kind of work with you and use kind of a post-it note method in some of those. Those are a couple of really helpful tools that we found.
Yep, great question. Any other questions or mindset shifts that anyone's had tonight? Great, thank you, Cindy.
I think just the idea of using this for like strategy level stuff for me was a little bit of a mindset shift. We use it a lot when we're doing problem solving, but like taking it up to that higher level and bringing that creativity and that freedom to be messy and open in that space, I think really opens a lot of avenues.
Good.
Absolutely, that's fantastic.
One of the things that I say a lot is that we prefer to start with a blank page. Often when we're jumping into conversations, we can want to start with like all the boxes that we want to fill in. And it can be really easy to just fill in a box and move on. But if we start with that blank page and we allow ourselves the freedom to expand here or connect here, that, in the strategy side, then you can be more confident that you've really done the work, that you've really explored, and you're ready to move it into execution.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Another kind of helpful thing, and for those, obviously, like you talked about, Amy, facilitating, others who facilitate when entering into a discussion like this where you can get visual. We found it's helpful, really helpful, to have a facilitator allow so that everybody else can join in, right? So that not one of the people who has to give input is also the facilitator. So they have to defer to everybody else first, and they kind of feel left out, or too much control of the pen on the board of dictating where things are going. So using a visual or a graphic recorder with facilitation is a great combo for us.
Any other final questions?
Raise your hand if you now self-identify as a visual thinker. It's up to you.
There we go.
There we go.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time tonight. We really appreciate it, and I hope that you've enjoyed the conversation. I definitely have. I love hearing about the variety of things that everyone's coming to this with. And I wish you all the best in your visual thinking journey and wherever else this might take you. So.
And if you want to explore your visual thinking path with us, join our newsletter, come sign up, and we'll just have more conversation. You'll find out when we're chatting next or hosting a free roundtable or something like that. We'd love to see your faces again.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. Thank you so much,
Thank
Marita
you.
and Eric. That was a wealth of information and very, very refreshing take on strategy. So thank you so much for putting that together and taking the time to be here with us tonight.